at the Aspen Ideas Festival 2010. And brace yourself because you are in for a very busy schedule. On that note, there are a couple of changes already today that I wanted to make sure you are aware of. There are two sessions that are moving from 10:30 to 2:30 and vice versa. So Fred Dust's session, Can We Rethink Consumer Behavior, originally scheduled for 10:30, will now be at 2:30. David Kirkpatrick's session, Facebook Effect, originally scheduled for 2:30, will now be at 10:30. And then two room changes. Twitter Effect will now be at 2:30 at the McNulty Room of Dor Hosier, and America, Land of Opportunity, will be in the Booz Allen Hamilton Room in Coke. So both of those are 2:30 and just a room switch. So note those schedule changes, please, and they will be up on the HP touchscreens outside as well. So to this morning's session, this is the first in a new series that we have this year of CEO breakfast interviews called Talks with the Top. And this morning, our topic is how do we turn innovation into industry? And the CEO at the center of that is Mike Splinter of Applied Materials. You all, I hope, know Applied Materials, the global leader in nanomanufacturing technology solutions, providing equipment, service, and software products for the manufacturing of solar voltaic cells, flat panel displays, flexible electronics, energy-efficient glass, and semiconductor chips. This morning, the interviewer will be David Bradley, my boss, the chairman and owner of Atlantic Media. Atlantic Media includes The Atlantic, National Journal, Congress Daily, and Government Executive. And prior to this current work, David founded, launched, grew, and took to IPO two companies in Washington, D.C., the Advisory Board Company and the Corporate Executive Board. So thank you again for being here, and I'll turn things over to you, David.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Good morning, everyone. So I have the privilege of introducing you to Mike Splinter and then guiding him through some questions that will at least touch on the frontier of science and technology. There is a true story written up by the Washington Post from just over 20 years ago. You remember the name Dan Quayle? So he's elected with George Bush in 1988, and in January 1989, in fact, the morning that he's to be inaugurated, Dan Quayle wakes up and he decides he wants a last chance to be out and among the people. So he gets up and he drives to a Roy Rogers restaurant that was in upper northwest Washington. And he went to the counter and he ordered food and took his tray and went back to a table. And then he turned to the woman to the table to his immediate left and he says, "Hi, my name's Dan Quayle." "Hi," she responds, "I'm your Secret Service agent." Pure Dan Quayle, sort of the goodwill and friendly and eager and so forth, and not a huge amount of cunning. So you take the owner of a 19th century print magazine and throw him against a frontier like this, and you'll go, what a lovely man he is. A shame he doesn't have the least idea what he's talking about up there. But that's what, in fact, what I'll do.
So, you must be talking about me. I thought I was interviewing you. I thought you were the CEO this morning.
No, but I'd love you to fly out on my jet in a couple hours. So, so Mike Splinter, this is a man you are going to want to be, in fact. It is at least plausible, you could make this defense, that in the history of the human species, of the 3 or 4 great runs of technology advance, one of them was the 30 years that ended the 20th century. And the center of that was computing power. And the center of that was the semiconductor chip. And the epicenter of that was Silicon Valley. And into the 1970s, you have a young graduate from the University of Wisconsin, undergrad and master's, engineering, with that go west mentality, who arrives exactly at the moment that it went into vertical ascent. This is as precise either a calculation or a stroke of divine intervention into a human life as you could have in that period. And what Mike ended up doing was riding and leading the run-up of the growth of the Silicon Valley industry across a 30-year period, trafficking with titans and fellow CEOs. The company Applied Materials is a $10 billion company. It's 14,000 employees. It doesn't actually make the semiconductor chip. it makes the equipment that has to have that exquisite precision to in turn make the chip. And that equipment is used in virtually all of the semiconductor chips and flat screens that are used in technology around the world. It also takes you into the popular areas that even those of us who are tech people care about. So his material is at the frontier of your cell phone and your laptops, your flat screen television, and 3D television, which is to follow. And then in a lovely leap is part of the panel solar energy industry that is, again, just at its nascent hour. I was thinking through topics that I think are fair game for you in Q&A when we get there. I thought I'd just list off some. I have 8. The rise of Silicon Valley, early titans and their personalities, the cutting edge of computing technology, the future of consumer IT products, what we all care about, alternative energy, especially solar energy. Mike and Applied Materials are deep in China and deep in India. A lot of questions going to U.S. competitiveness and the global talent war. And then the 8th question is why Mike's favorite magazine is The Atlantic. And if it's not, we're going to have a sound. Mike's wife, Pat, is here with us this morning. She is herself a venture capitalist and has done much of the same run through the industry and is being long-suffering and having done dinner with us and breakfast with us this morning. So I would like to begin where the laymen begin. First, this is done by nanotechnology. Just give us a paragraph. What is nanotechnology?
I have no idea. No. Nanotechnology, if we go back quite some time to kind of the beginning of the semiconductor industry when people were making transistors at sizes we thought were large. At that time, we talked about microns, and a micron is a millionth of a meter, and that's pretty small, and so it's hard to imagine. Now...
That was pre-nano.
That was pre-nano.
A millionth of a
yes,
meter.
That was pre-nano,
Okay.
so a millionth of a...
Clumsy, awkward.
Yes, big, stumbling along
Right.
kind of sizes. And so a nano is 1,000th of a micro. And so over a period of time, this 30-year period that we're talking about, the dimensions have gone down by 1,000x. And so the density is the square of that, or by many millions of x. Actually, we say 20 million x. The density of packing transistors in has gone down to by something like 20 million times. It's just...
In our, not just our lifetime, in the last, what?
Since mid-70s.
Mid-70s.
Till today.
And how big is a semiconductor chip?
Well,
Hold it up for us. What's it?
A chip, actually, a memory device or a microprocessor, might be a half an inch on a side, something like that. But if you want to put a nanometer in terms of, that people can relate to, about a nanometer is, if you take like just 1 inch or something close to 1 inch, like a marble this size, and compare it to the size of the Earth. That would be the size. That would be a comparison of our height to a nanometer.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it's 2 times 10 to the 9th.
And what was important about getting it so small?
Well, you get more and more functionality.
Excuse me.
I'm worried you're going to get your wires crossed. But the importance of continuing to get smaller and smaller sizes, that you get more and more functionality. This is getting these things smaller, and because they get smaller, they get less expensive, and that's what's really allowed the revolutions that we've seen over the last 30 years when we start with computing. And in the 70s, we didn't have personal computing. You have to remember, personal computer only came around in the 1980s, in the early 1980s. But first it was industrial computing that came to the fore, and then personal computing, and then the communication, cell phone, and internet, and gaming, and all the things that social networks that we know today and love today and have changed our lives in so many ways. But being able to shrink those devices down by 20 million times has allowed us to create functionality, create devices that do things that were unimaginable just a few years ago. It's hard to imagine that we didn't have cell phones in 1990, or that we just first had a car phone that looked pretty much like a regular phone. I remember my wife's car, there was a regular phone, and in the trunk there was a big box, and but that wasn't that long ago on the scale of time. But that's how fast the technology changes are happening, day after day and year after
Have we
year.
plateaued in that, or is that just from excitement to excitement?
We haven't plateaued at all, I don't think. We continue to see new devices, new gadgets that are coming out that are going to add to the mobility of people, add to the mobility of their computing power, access to information. These things continue to change. And we talk about Moore's Law. Moore's Law is every year you double the number of every other year you double the number of transistors in that space. That rule is continuing. Everybody talks about it slowing down or stopping. But in reality, the leading companies in this industry continue to move it forward and continue to move it forward on that pace. And that's a breakneck pace, frankly.
Just before we get earnest, do a little bit of the gee whiz. So what's the technology we're going to see in our homes or on our laptops or on television across the next few years?
I think we're going to, the one that I'm intrigued by today is iPad, which really, I think, changes the mobile computing platform and the access to information platform. I think we're going to see over the next few years a dramatic change. The devices will get lighter, they'll get more easy to use. The amount of information and the quickness at which you can access TV, and when I say information content, whether your interest is art or education or just entertainment, you're going to be able to get that information instantaneously when you need it, where you need it. And I think this has been the dream for a long time for our industry, but now the reality is starting to happen as the communication networks are getting stronger and more ubiquitous. So I think we're going to see more devices in this category. I think that's one that's very, very exciting. We're going to continue to see costs come down. So I'm very intrigued also by displays of all different kinds. Let's call these displays TVs, because now flat panel, we used to call them flat panel TVs, but they're largely TVs now. You don't have to say, nobody's going out today and buying a CRT TV where it's this thick. You buy the thinnest one possible, but the kind of things that this enables are, you're walking through an airport, you see big signs. Now with computers connected to those, it can know that the flight is coming from Turkey. And those people going through the airport are interested in where the Turkish restaurants are, or the community is, or museums are. And so it can, in an instant, tailor the information that gets presented to people at that moment. And I think that kind of instantaneous change and just tailoring of the message to the people at the moment that they need it, we're going to see all kinds of applications like this. And then kind of the fun stuff like 3D movies and TV, these kind of things are going to be terrific. They will take a little bit of time for people to get used to them. have to solve the problem of wearing glasses. I don't think people are going to, 10 years from now, have to wear glasses to have the 3D. No.
Will you be part of that technology?
Yes, of course. So part of...
Just give us a paragraph on that. What's happening in 3D TV?
Well, the TV today, of course, it's a flat panel TV. So what the glasses do is basically polarize the light so that you can see it in different. You can see in different eyes different images, so you get a perception of depth. What people are working on now is to put those different layers on the TV itself, so that you don't have to wear. Instead of you wearing the glasses, the TV is wearing the glasses, basically.
And just to demonstrate how remarkable this is, Mike isn't actually with us this morning. Mike is...
I'm really hoping for teletransportation, but being a Star Trek geek from the 1970s, and that is the one that I've been hoping for. You know, Scotty, beam me to Tokyo or Shanghai or someplace.
There was one other sentence that I just thought was engaging at a GWES level, and then we'll do the earnest material for which the Aspen Ideas Festival is well known. Literature in the company talks about glass coating for buildings. What does that mean?
Well, one of the transformations that Applied Materials is making, they were adding a business in the area of energy and environment. As many of you know, buildings are the biggest source of energy use, even bigger than cars, biggest single use of energy. And so there's a huge opportunity in improving the efficiency of how buildings perform, and that can be done with computer systems. But we're all pretty familiar that windows are pretty bad insulators, and so the heat comes in or the cold comes in and changes the energy efficiency of the building. So we have a business that we make machines that coat glass with certain nanofilms that allow the sunlight in, but keep the heat out, or vice versa, give better insulating parameters. And these have clever names like triple low E, very descriptive of what they do, but significantly improve the energy efficiency in buildings.
In this we will see over time.
We're seeing it today, and we'll see improvements in that technology over a period of time. As primarily it happens in new buildings, but increasingly as people become more interested in energy efficiency, it will happen as retrofit to buildings. One example of this, everybody's seen skyscrapers that are blue or green or different colors, and they're colors because of very, very thin films on the glass that reflect that color of light. And so this is kind of an advanced application of that approach.
So let me use that as a segue into clean energy and probably into solar power in particular. Applied Materials has put $1 billion into acquisitions in this field across the last couple of years. Clearly, you have a division organized around it, investment going into it. Some of your top science is being done in this area. You're making a bet that not everybody is making. So pull back for a moment and give us your state of the union of what's going on in clean energy and in solar power in the United States.
Do you want the short answer or the long answer? Well,
it's a significant.
I think there.
No, seriously.
I think in the United States, there's quite a good focus on clean energy R&D. There's little focus on clean energy deployment at scale. And that...
Talk us through that.
Yeah, so the United States is a very innovative country, and we do invest in R&D, especially when venture capitalists or industry can see that there's going to be a market in a new area. I don't think there's any question in anybody's mind that over a long period of time, let's say over the next 30, 40, 50 years, that the way we generate, store, transmit, and use energy has to improve dramatically from the way we do it today. And whether that's automobiles burning oil or electricity generated by coal, those things are going to have to change in order for us to protect the planet and have a climate that we're going to be able to live in as human beings. So we've been investing in this area for some time, but in the United States, mostly what's happening today is investment in R&D. Part of the stimulus bill enabled that. There's a pretty significant amount of money. Not all of it has been spent, but we will see it get spent over a period of time, and we will increase our R&D spending. But the bigger problem in the United States is there demand for clean energy? And many people have put solar panels on their rooftops. There are quite a bit of wind that's been deployed across the country. But beyond that, not much has happened. And it hasn't happened, I think, for several reasons. There's no demand because there's no forcing function to create the demand. A number of states do have renewable electricity standards, which is pushing things forward here and there in a disjointed fashion. But even despite one of the greatest environmental disasters of all time, it doesn't appear that we can get an energy bill or a climate bill passed in our Congress this year because of political realities. And I think that's a fundamental issue for our country. It's that we are not taking this issue seriously. I think when you ask people, do they want to have clean energy? Answer generally is yes. We did a survey this summer that more than half of the people responded that they would pay more on their electric bill to have clean energy. But the reality is there just isn't a forcing function to make it happen in an organized way. And the people will say, well, it costs too much. Well, right now, it does cost too much, and the way it's going to cost less is to get into the cycle of scaling up, incrementally adding technology, scaling up, and keep moving the cost down till it really is competitive with other forms of electricity. In the computer industry, as those industries grew, there are always early adopters. There's consumers who want to get on the new technology quickly and adopt and get it scaled up, and as it scales, it reduces costs. You don't have the same equivalent at the right scale in the energy area because when people put a few thousand watts on their roof, that's not the same way you do it for a utility who has to think about gigawatts of power. And so that function to scale up and help reduce the cost today is happening in other countries, not in the United States.
So when your colleagues, when CEOs in Silicon Valley, venture capitalists sit down to talk about this field, is there frustration with the way it stands now? And do you envision, maybe not the order of magnitude of from 1 to 1/20 millionth of kind of rescaling, but could you see this comparably inspiring plummeting of costs and increase in efficiency such that we'd be going 15 years from now? I can't believe we didn't convert over earlier. Could
Absolutely.
that be net better than
Absolutely.
what we've got now?
Yes, absolutely.
And if BP said, the CEO of BP wakes up and says, I've just had it. This is so not fun. And all the other oil companies agreed and said, let's just go back into supporting the arts. Would you, what's the gap between all of that stopping and when Silicon Valley and the industrialization or scaling up of technology could fill the gap? We're talking 40 years? Are we talking 5 years?
We're really talking in the 5 to 10 year kind of range to get into those really cost competitive zones. If you take, and one of the technologies is available. If you think about electricity and cleaning up electricity today, nuclear is available today to clean up electricity. It's a political issue, it's a waste issue, but technology is available today. United States has lost that technology also being deployed in Japan and France and other locations. We're talking about it here, but the technologies that are complementary to that, like solar energy, which helps with peaking, the cost is going to come down very rapidly, and it already is coming down very rapidly. If we just go back to 2007, the typical cost of a solar panel was over $4. Today it's approaching $1.50. So that's more than a factor of 2 reduction in just a couple of years. And while I don't think we see that fast a reduction continuing because these cost reductions happen on an irregular basis, we will see about a 20% improvement on average every year. And so at the point it is now, we need to reduce again by half.
And that's without a massive forcing function by government pricing or regulation.
In the United States, the pricing really is being dictated by the European incentives, and those get lowered every year. And so the pricing will come down along the incentive curve until the incentives can go away like they should go away for an industry like this.
Would you guess that our children will in net pay more or less for energy across the course of their adult lives than we will in our generation?
Well, in the United States, we will pay more.
It will go up.
I believe so because energy in real cost has not increased at all over the last 40 or 50 years. Electricity costs have not increased.
So even
gasoline costs have increased, but
even when we load in this technology to come, run it out 20, 30 years, it will be more expensive than it is today.
It'll be a little bit more expensive, primarily because we have to change over the generating fleet over this period of time. And so massive capital investment has to be made over 30, 40 years to replace all the generators. Half the generators are coal today in the United States, 50%. And 20% is nuclear and 10% water, and then you get down to the smaller and smaller sources.
So the great thing about chatting with the Atlantic is we have very long turnaround times. It will be decades before your answer comes out publicly. So take us behind the curtain. If we were in your research lab and you wanted to show us the exciting thing that's coming out of your work as to solar power and solar panels, what would you show us?
Well, there's a number of different nanotechniques that are going on that allow the efficiency of the solar cells to continue to improve. And one of the techniques is you can drill with a laser a very microscopic hole through the wafer, and you can do this thousands and thousands of time. But you make them so small that it doesn't use up much of the area of the silicon. So by doing that, you can improve the efficiency maybe 20 or 30%.
That's interesting.
And so those are the kind of things that people are working on and thinking about in the back rooms.
Does it still feel like the frontier to you after all these years in Silicon Valley?
Oh, it very much is the frontier. I pinch myself quite often because it's very hard to imagine that our engineers, scientists, product developers are able to do the things that they do. I mean, this really is rocket science. I mean, the old saying, "This is not rocket science." This really is rocket science.
Let me ask one more question, then I'll shift the burden to all of you. But I want to reserve 3 or 4 minutes to ask a few questions at the end that I know you're not going to ask.
Are you sure?
You might want to send out notes because that's what people are going to pour into here. Those 4 grueling minutes of Mike Wallace-like. So no more Mr. Nice Guy at the close.
Oh, here we go.
So when you talk among yourself, not you talking, but when you're hearing the conversation of your fellow leaders in the Valley, what's the talk about the Obama administration today? It was enthusiastic 2 years ago. Everything becomes real world, so nothing can remain at that romance. But is it above or below where you would have expected it to be?
Well, I think from an industry standpoint, it's below. I think there's a lot of worry right now that industry is not viewed as the solution to the jobs problem. I think fundamentally the biggest issue that will face our country here in the near term is how do we get our people employed again? When I just look at our customer base, we didn't mention this at the outset, but this year, almost 90% of our sales will be outside the United States. The pull for the technology that we have, the pull to be close to the customers, most of them in Asia, 75% or so in Asia is enormous. When I talk to VCs like Pat and others, their companies are starting their manufacturing not in the United States, but in Asia or China. So those things are quite worrisome. The motivations today are to move out of the United States. And we have a huge debt that's coming up that we have to deal with. It means more taxes. And today, frankly, our tax rate on a worldwide competitive basis for industry is not competitive. I was in Taiwan a few weeks ago talking to some of the government people there, and they said they are really working hard. They think they have to lower their tax rate in Taiwan from around 20% to 15% so that they stay competitive with Singapore, Korea, some of the, not China, because they don't view themselves necessarily as competing with China, but on high-tech jobs like semiconductors, flat panel displays, LED manufacturing. They feel like they have to do that to keep attracting industry. And those countries make it their job to attract industry and to keep industry and keep the jobs there. You don't get that sense here.
If you weren't born an American and had that part of your wiring as well, and you're purely deciding on the merits, financial merits or talent merits, what percent of your 14,000 people would you employ in the United States?
Well, it's a hard answer, but probably about 20%. And it would be...
And declining?
I don't think it would be declining. It would be very focused on certain R&D areas. And we can still hire the best PhDs in the world here in the United States. There's no question that the universities that we have in science and the physical sciences are extremely good, and they attract people from all over the world, the smartest people from all over the world. So I think that would still be a spot where we would really have a focused R&D segment, but pretty much else, everything else we could do someplace else.
Let's see if there's some questions here. Please, and Antoine, why don't you start and set the example by standing up and introducing yourself? We have a microphone here. Okay, great. This is being videotaped, I gather. So
just remember, your question is being videotaped. Go on.
It's okay. Antoine van Akmaal. I, like you, was recently in Taiwan, had some of the same impressions. But I wanted to ask you a question about, as the name of your company is Applied Materials, and you're clearly interested in solar. Can you tell us a little bit about polysilicon versus amorphous silicon and the future of amorphous silicon? Whether you think the conversion rates can be brought up to a level that make it attractive and appealing, and what do you think about this?
Sure. Today, in solar cells, there's kind of two kinds of solar cells. Those that are made on silicon wafers, those are the kind that go on everybody's rooftop that you see all over. And then there's solar cells that can be deposited on glass. Largely, these are either silicon on glass or cadmium telluride or other materials that are put in very thin films on glass. And the big difference is the wafer ones are more efficient, but they're also more expensive. And so it makes sense to put those in places where real estate is expensive, like, or confined, like on your rooftop, or in small spaces where in the middle of a city where real estate might be quite expensive. The promise of thin film is not that the efficiency is going to be the same as crystalline silicon, but that the cost, fundamental cost, is going to be lower because glass is cheaper than silicon, and doing a very, very thin film of whatever material you're using to create electricity can be done very, very cheaply. So I think that what we're going to see over a period of time is continued strength in crystalline silicon. It's going to be the dominant technology far, far into the future. And we will see thin film silicon and thin film other technologies have their place primarily on the ground in large arrays that are going to be done in fields. So even today, the costs are lower. They'll continue, I think, to get lower, but both technologies are going to move down the learning curve. Crystalline silicon has much bigger scale. So it's going to continue to move as fast or faster than thin film over this period of time. So, but this is just a cost game in the end. So whichever technology has the lowest cost for the application is the technology that will win. And I think there will be more than one technology in the marketplace. What is your bet? Well, we're betting on both right now. As you know, we make equipment for both of those technologies. And so we can sell to the people making crystalline, so we can sell to the people who make thin film. That's the best position for us to be in. Steve has a...
Steve Clements with the New America Foundation. Mike, David may have mentioned this, but you sit on an economic advisory panel that advises the president on what to do in the economy. And I'd like to get a sense of what really goes on in those sessions. Are those feel-good, everybody's happy sessions, or do you really hammer them and say, we're not investing in the future? And I was with George Scalise recently of the Semiconductor Industry Association, who makes the point that in nanotechnology, which you say is so important, the U.S. is missing the boat, that we're not doing the things that we were doing at the beginning of the semiconductor industry. We're not making the fundamental strategic partnering investments that would create high productivity, high wage labor opportunities in the United States, and we're going to miss this boat. And so I'd love to know, when you're sitting with the president, are you giving him a little grief?
These sessions are very frank and honest and very pointed. As you can imagine, CEOs of major companies are quite direct. So they're open and honest, and but
how forthcoming is he then?
He's pretty forthcoming, but the question is, what has happened? What are the results? And I don't think that the results are there. There's was a group, and many different industry associations are supporting in the energy field that we should triple our level of R&D from kind of $5 billion a year in a $1 trillion business to $15 billion a year. It's still 0.15% of the total, so that we don't miss the boat on energy technology, which I think will be a huge job creator over the next 10, 20, 30 years. But these sessions are very candid, to answer your question directly.
Right in.
Hi, my name is Wiley Caldwell, and I'm very retired. but very concerned. And you have not commented yet, and I would appreciate your comments on the storage problems with solar energy. Obviously, it doesn't work at night. Okay.
Yeah, solar energy. So the sun doesn't shine at night, and if that's news for anybody, that
Flesh that out a little bit.
but let me say, while it is night in New York, it is still daytime in California, and especially that's one of the problems that we have in this country is transmission. But let me answer the question more directly. Storage will be a problem. It is not a problem really today, and the reason for that is that if you look at the electricity profile and the usage of electricity during the daytime, so it's common sense that we're using more electricity at 2 or 3 or 4 in the afternoon than we are at midnight. It's dark at midnight, it's light in the afternoon. So that profile goes like this, and it's very coincident with solar electricity production. So at least in the short term, while solar can address the peak of the need of electricity, you don't need much storage. Actually, wind needs storage more than solar, because wind is just the opposite. This is a general statement, and there's all kinds of specifics, but wind blows at night more than it blows during the day. And so utilizing that electricity effectively is a challenge. And today, coal plants are being modified or moderated their electricity output. Gas plants are being moderated to be able to use up the wind power that's generated at night. So storage is a big issue. There's a lot of R&D going on in storage. I believe the solution will be a nanotechnology-like solution that'll allow many, many more electrons to be stored in a much smaller space. But to this discussion, the technology that's going to really push it, I believe, is electric cars or hybrid cars, hybrid electric vehicles. That will push the battery technology before power companies and grid kind of storage pushes it. So if we can, because cars have the problem of weight and energy density, if you can solve that problem, I think you can scale it up to solve the grid storage issue.
My name is Ashok Shukla of American Biotechnology. I have a quick question which we are listening different meetings, that if we don't manufacture, we cannot innovate. And when you are saying your 80% workforce is outside USA and 20% innovation and R&D here, how long we can keep this if we don't manufacture R&D in USA?
Yeah, I think this is.
Do you want to repeat the question on that, Mike?
The question is, can you really keep up the innovation and hold on to the industry generation if you don't manufacture? Because I think the premise is manufacturing and innovation are integrally linked. And yes, I think this is a fundamental issue that our country is facing today. It will face even more severely over a period of time, because for a company like ours, we have to be with our customers. We have to have many engineers with our customers. It's hard for our engineers to travel thousands of miles. It's hard for their engineers to travel thousands of miles. So the pull to have customers and critical suppliers, manufacturing and R&D close together is large. And it's one of the reasons why our company has joined a council on competitiveness, which is looking into this topic about manufacturing in the United States and what we can do to get back to looking at the things that are going to enable keeping manufacturing here, because there is that pull. It's undeniable. And we have the anchor, though. We have the anchor of great universities, of VC funding, industrial funding in the United States. Still, a lot of the profits still come back to the United States that are generated in other countries or by selling offshore. But I think this is a big issue that we face, and one that there is currently not a solution to in the environment we have today.
Hi, I'm David Dunn from University of Toronto. Do you think it's likely that the developing world could leapfrog the US in renewable energy? And if so, are there technologies that they could adopt and use as stepping stones?
The answer is yes, I do. And the part of the reason I believe that is because they need electricity. Today, part of the issue in the United States is we don't need more electricity because if we go back, the profile of the electricity is changing a bit, but we're not using as much electricity as we used in 2007 in the United States. So demand is down. Trying to do a changeover when demand is down is hard to do. If you look at China or India, those are the two most popular so-called developing countries. They need a lot more electricity, and they're going to buy more cars. So the need to create an electric car, BYD is a Chinese company that has an electric car, to create batteries that are going to fuel those electric cars, to create new forms of electricity generation. The fundamental need is huge. So they have a forcing function. When there's a need, they're going to go after the best technology. I think this is a scale, depends on which area, but I think mostly it's a scale and incremental technology improvement. We have to remember electricity, number one issue is deliver reliably. So using really far out technology is not going to happen, I don't think, on large scale. Incrementally, it will get used, but it has to be proven that it's reliable for 30, 40 years, and those things will happen. But the pull will be largely from developing countries.
John Horton, my question is, how do you manage innovation in your business given the sort of recurring boom-bust cycles of your customers that seem to go from fear to greed over and over? And it would seem then also dealing with the consistent change of wafer sizes, going from 200 to 300 to 400 millimeter wafer would seem like you've got two huge recurring cyclical challenges. How do you manage innovation through that? Thank you.
So this is one of the big challenges for our company. As I said at the outset, we make manufacturing equipment. So when the economy is moving up, people build factories, and so our business does well. But when the economy is moving down, not too many new factories are being built. In fact, very, very few. So our business goes down quite rapidly. If we look at a period of time, we keep our R&D budget pretty flat through a cycle. So through the up, through the down, we'll keep our R&D budget pretty flat. Now, where we invest that might change because of where we think the next opportunities are, but we don't change our R&D budget dramatically during the ups and downs. We do try to flex other parts of the company, from administration to manufacturing, but we try to keep our R&D investments pretty level to keep the innovation going, keep the new product development going. But it is a challenge for sure, because customers, pretty much when they're not spending money, they don't want to talk to you very much. But that's a major challenge for us.
Let's do one more question here at the back.
From the Ohio STEM Learning Network. I'm curious to know, what work is Applied Materials doing to ensure the future workforce needed to continue this type of innovation?
So clearly it would take it at multiple levels, maybe, and talk about what we're doing to try to encourage. Maybe start at kind of grades 0 through 12, and we invest in various programs, mostly in our local communities, as examples of how you can help young people of color, women, to get interested in science and technology, to kind of demystify math. And one of the things that we do is we have teachers that come in every summer. They experience what it's like to be in industry so that they can better relate to their students about what the realities of being in business are, what it was like for them. They can speak firsthand to the students. We also have other programs throughout our communities that we work in, not only in the United States, but around the world. And then in our industry association, we participate in the development of technical courses so that people are prepared to work in the factories, semiconductor factories or equipment factories in the United States. At the college level, we give out scholarships and the like, but we also have a number of research programs with various major universities where we're working and doing R&D with graduate students, with undergraduate students. And of course, we want to encourage our own workforce to continue their education. And I think that's in a technology company where technology changes quite often, that's also very important to give our people the opportunity to stay current and continue their education. So we kind of try to view this on an end-to-end basis. But companies cannot solve the overall education issue. That is one of the jobs of government and families and individuals. We can make inputs, we can give money and people and time. Our engineers go out and teach in schools, and we encourage them to do that. But in the end, this education has to be a government and family-oriented solution.
Mike, going back to your youth in the industry, you're in your 20s. You must have met some of the iconic figures of Silicon Valley over the years. Who were you really impressed by?
Well, there's a lot of people to be impressed by, but David, as you know, most of those middle years in the 80s and 90s, I spent at Intel, and two of the people that were instrumental in the founding of Intel and the success of Intel were Gordon Moore and Andy Grove. Couldn't have been two more different people. Gordon, very quiet, and
give us a little thumbnail of each.
Gordon Moore, whose Moore's Law is named after, made the observation I made earlier on doubling the transistors every couple of years. But very quiet man, very unassuming. The first time I met Gordon, I got hired at Intel to run what was called Fab 1, they were #1 factory. And so I'm in the cafeteria with some of the factory workers having lunch, and Gordon Moore comes down and says, "Gee, can I join you guys for lunch?"
Very nice.
And that was not an uncommon occurrence. He would be there every day.
Was his intelligence something like none of us would ever have seen, or you'd say, no, bright guy, but we find
Gordon was brilliant. Both these guys are really quite brilliant, but in different ways. Gordon was just brilliant, but very unassuming, very humble man. And the nicest, quietest man you'd ever want to know. But he could remember things, scientific approaches and facts like nobody I ever met. And in reviews, he would be able to,
And what was Grove's gift?
Grove's gift was quite different, but insight into the fundamental issue that an organization or people or products were facing. And this, in industry as in life, it's very hard to get down to really what is the base reason that either you're acting the way you are or that's causing difficulty. But if you can get down there, you can, if you can see through all the clouds and the disguise and masks, you can really make a difference. And he could do that better than anybody I've ever seen. And just kind of be able to, not so politely oftentimes, tell you are not getting to the fundamental issues. Yeah, well, if anybody has heard the lore about Andy Grove, most of that's true. Yeah.
Do you have an anecdote?
I do. I'm not sure I want to share it, but there was, I will, this is, I think, pretty innocent, but this was sometime after the Pentium crisis in 1990, late 95, early 96, where there was a flaw in the microprocessor, and we had to turn over I was running Intel's manufacturing at the time, had to turn over the manufacturing line, and so we were shorting customers, and this is again another cafeteria story. I'm big on cafeteria stories. I'm in a cafeteria line, and with a lot of other people, and Grove comes up to me and quite loudly says that I'm ruining the company, that because of my inability to manage. I'm being much more polite now. My inability to manage my group.
Is that scarring, or is that just another day in the cafeteria?
that was something I remember quite clearly today. So I guess I'll go back to work. That wasn't time to go eat. Andy, would you like to have lunch?
You've known, lift up from them, you've known a good number of the founding titans, many of whom became wealthy at a scale that was almost unknown. What do you think about great wealth? What's its effect on people? Did it change the people? Does it change their children? Are you kind of middling on it, or do you go, my gosh, that's a good idea?
I think, first of all, the pursuit of wealth is one of the American dreams, that anybody, wherever you grow up, whatever your family history is here, you have an opportunity to achieve a wealth of some level. And I think the pursuit is more important than the having. I don't think it changes the people that pursue it very much. I do worry that it changes the next generation and their motivation to pursue. The pursuit is what has made America, is one of the things that have made America great. And whether the pursuit is for money or for other purposes, better purposes perhaps, I don't think it matters so much. But the pursuit is what has made
That's a nice
this
distinction.
Yeah.
It's easy to enjoy an hour of conversation with you. Congratulations on a great career. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David.